Hey, I'm Di McQueen, licensed clinical social worker, family and addiction expert. I'm here with Dr. Brian Jackson, my longtime cohort who specializes in the field of addiction. Welcome to Healing Families Shattered by Addiction.
Di and I have worked with addicts, alcoholics, and their families for over 30 years combined. Our podcast and coaching programs focus on families who have a loved one suffering from addiction. Our experience has been that this disease affects families as much, if not more, than the addict or alcoholic.
Is your world spinning out of control? Are you codependent? Are you experiencing worry, loss of sleep, and difficulty concentrating? If so, you're in the right place. Brian and I have both personally lived it, learned it, and now we're going to teach you tools and techniques on how to get your life back that you thought was shattered by addiction.
Okay, let's dive in.
Brian and I are so excited to introduce to you our new sponsor, Lakeview Health. They are a wonderful residential treatment center. Whether it's the family member who is looking for a place or the addict or alcoholic themselves, this would be the place that we would refer them to. Brian, you have many years of experience with Lakeview.
Yeah, Lakeview Health is a center of excellent addiction treatment. They take an evidence-based approach, medical approach to treating this complex brain disease. They hold the Joint Commission's Golden Seal, and they were voted one of America's best treatment centers by Newsweek magazine. They deliver dual diagnosis, gender-responsive, and trauma-informed care at their gorgeous facility here in Jacksonville, Florida. But they do see people from all over the world do come here to Jacksonville to go to treatment at Lakeview. Their levels of care include medically supervised detox, which a lot of people do need. Then they stabilize them in a residential rehabilitation and partial hospitalization program. They have board-certified physicians, master-level therapists, and they work to address the unique needs of each patient. So in other words, it's not a cookie-cutter program. They help individuals build skills for long-term sobriety. So if you or someone you know needs treatment, please visit their site at lakeviewhealth.com. We also have a hyperlink on our website at familyandaddictionexperts.com where you can just click and get some information about Lakeview Health. And Di, I think you have a number for people to call if they would like to inquire about treatment.
I sure do. That number is 888-480-3799. That's 888-480-3799. Give them a call. Hey everybody, this is Di McQueen, and I am back with Healing Families Shattered by Addiction. Today, I am so blessed to have one of the most favorite people in my world with me today, Katie Grimes. She has her own thing going on for a very long time now, and she is now my business coach as well. And so I think that this is really one of those, like, how you see life change, go back and forth, how we could never have written this script. So Katie and I go way back. I'm going to say it's been 14, 15 years now since, actually we've known each other a lot longer than that. That's a big whole nother story. But the day I got a phone call from Katie about almost 15 years ago now, right? I think, Kate?
Yeah, actually this month, January, marks 15 years.
Wow. So long time, right? And when she had called, she was in a relationship with an alcoholic, an abusive alcoholic, someone who had done some not so kind things, and I'll let her decide if she wants to share those or not. Mm-hmm. And frankly, Kate was a mess. And I remember I began to share with her, I listened to what was going on, and the hopelessness and the sadness and I don't know which direction I'm going and how am I going to do this. And I remember saying to her, you know what, I know this seems like this is never going to end, but I promise you there are answers and there are solutions that we can work through together, and that we need each other. Like I needed her as much as she needed me, right? To reinforce my story. Mm-hmm. And so, that was one of the first things I think I did, right? We just listened, affirmed that she wasn't crazy, because you feel, at least I felt, that I was crazy. And so it was a special, special moment when you first start with someone. But for me, the specialness has been watching the transformation of this person that was so broken 15 years ago and where she is today, which is like, there's not even, and whenever she goes back to one of those, like, oh my God, there's all these things wrong with me. I go, really? Take a look back. Let's go back to 15 years ago.
Let's go back to 15 years ago. A lot has changed.
Lots has changed. So, again, Kate is like a daughter to me. I'm going to be honest about that. So self-disclosure that we have, that's how close we've become over the years and how this movement together. And I feel blessed to be able to be her mentor, but also she's also my mentor now, helping me kind of navigate through this whole business of, family and addiction experts. So Kate, welcome.
Thank you for having me on. I'm already teary-eyed. That was a beautiful introduction. And it's incredible to see, to have you remind me of where I was 15 years ago. It's funny, I live in the same area that I left that abusive relationship. And there's a particular bridge that I drive over every now and again. And I don't mean to start the podcast on such a dark note, but, it got so bad that I contemplated suicide. And so when I go over that bridge, I'm often reminded that, holy shit, it's gotten so much better. I still have those moments where the not good enough story pops up, but it's often replaced more quickly now with a reminder that I deserve to be happy. And that's really something that you taught me. And I feel very blessed and very grateful that you've been such an amazing mentor and also have taken on that role as mom for me. And that I have been able to give that back as it relates to how much time and energy and encouragement that you gave me, and be able to, really kind of give you that push last year and say, okay, you can help so many people who are suffering from addiction and families of addiction if we were to actually go coach, if you were to coach versus do therapy. So I'm happy to tell a little bit of my story and the impact that you've had on me. Yeah.
So let's start. Let's do that. I mean, this is where, the family gets to a point of not knowing what to do, trying so hard to control what's going on around them, not telling anybody because nobody would understand. No. And my situation is worse than anybody's, and I'm quite sure of that. And, we smile and look at each other and kind of chuckle a little bit. But that is truly how I felt. Like I was such a leper at that moment in time when I first started to come out of what was really going on in my world. And I remember, telling you, like, honey, you are not alone. I promise you.
Yeah, I think what was so impactful was you were telling me that I wasn't alone, and I trusted you, right? Because yes, I knew you, but I knew you when I was a child. I didn't know you as sort of that, maybe into high school, college when I really needed you. I didn't, I didn't really know that. But what I did trust was the comfort in what you were telling me, which was, there were rooms full of people in ACA or Al-Anon and in therapy, et cetera, that were talking about this topic of feeling like we're the only ones who have an addict in our life. And for me, I think it was twofold. I was also acting like an addict. So like, yes, I was in a relationship with someone who I loved or I thought was love. And there were really high highs and there were really low lows, and there was cheating and there was infidelity and there was physical abuse and there was an emotional abuse. And I didn't really know what to call any of those things, except I could identify physical abuse because that had happened in my home as a child. So I knew it was bad, like when it got to that point, but everything leading up, looking back, I'm like, oh, their shots were fired. There was warning signs, but I was living in a secret, and I wasn't telling my best friends. I wasn't telling my family that I was going through this until I finally called my dad one day after the guy that I had been dating and living with at the time had chose to go to the bar. And in my head, I was saying, so you're choosing the bar, or actually I was probably yelling it at him. You're choosing the bar over spending time with me. And two things happened in that moment. One, I realized that I felt so defeated and that I could not control this situation, no matter what the color it was that dyed my hair, how long it was, how short it was, what I wore, if I had lingerie, if I cooked dinner, if I made the bed, if I didn't, like, I tried everything to make this man just love me. But then I think the other part was I also felt this odd familiarity of like, I think I've said this phrase before. And I realized I had said that phrase to my mom. So when I put two and two together that I was essentially dating somebody who reminded me of my mom, I called my dad, who you knew. And that's when I confided in him that I was leaving for the first time. Actually, this was really the second time, but the first time while we were living together. And he said, you should call Di. And I was like, why would I call Di? Like, I'm so embarrassed. Why would I call her? And he very briefly told me a part of your story, but said he wanted to be mindful that it was your story to share. And he said, but if you're going to call anybody, like that's who I would call. And so I didn't call you. I didn't call you. That was October. I didn't call you until January. I went back, lived with him. And that was the other thing is I was doing that dance of like not telling anybody that we were like on and off and on and off and the chaos. And I lost my job. I had $10.47 in my name. And I remember that number exactly because I couldn't afford to actually pay for the motel down the street. And yeah, it was bad.
It's horrible, and most people, when we get to a place like, that old adage of, pain is inevitable, suffering is optional. I had no idea that suffering was optional. I did not know that. And it was interesting that when you and I first started talking, right, like you had no idea that I lived your story. Mm-hmm. And mine was my own, a little different, but lots of abuse, lots of infidelity in the sense of betrayal, trauma. This is where we can really identify the fact that when I tried to explain to families and to the addict or alcoholic that the family member is without a doubt living in a relationship that the person is being unfaithful to them with their drug of choice, whether or not they've gone out and been with another woman, man, etc. They are being not 100% honest. They're not being loyal, faithful, truthful. The list goes on. So the feelings are the exact same. That we come to the same reaction in the same place as someone who's been betrayed by infidelity, right? As in an affair. But that's really what's happening. And in our brain, we digest it the exact same way. And it is an intense trauma. And it's something that we really need to work through. Then we couple it with emotional and physical abuse often. Certainly the emotional abuse. And it can be on both sides, right? Like we've become people we don't even know. And, thinking to ourselves, like, how on earth, my recollection was, how on earth did I get here?
That's what happened for me. It was actually that day I was driving over the bridge to leave and I contemplated suicide. And I was like, how did I get here? This feels like a Lifetime special movie. Like, I come from a privileged household. I had two parents. Yes, sure, they were divorced, but there was always food on the table. They always provided for me. I had ended up being able to go to college. Like I was well educated. So what I was confused about and didn't know was how did I get myself into such a terrible situation with someone whom I loved? That was the confusing part. It's like, if he wasn't good looking, it didn't have all these things that I thought would create a beautiful life. If he was horrible to me, I think it would have been easier, which it was. It was easier once it got horrible and it progressed. You had always said that with any sort of disease is like his overworking progressed, his overspending progressed, his infidelities progressed, the drugs started coming in, alcohol, it just started to progress. And what's really sad is 15 years later, I've heard how bad it's progressed for him.
And it is sad. And
it's super sad. Yeah. And I think for me, I thank God you came back into my life because I could have had that same story as him because that's where my life was going. I wasn't overworking, but I was underworking, which is why I got fired, right? I was overeating, I was overspending, I wasn't working out. I was just in this rat race. And I think what I learned was that I really had to make a choice. And I remember exactly where I was. I was standing in Brighton, Massachusetts, walking up the steps of my home. And I called you and I called you and I said, he's been unfaithful again. And this time I actually left. And now 2 days later, he's already in a relationship. And I really want to tell him to boop, boop, beep, boop, boop, and you said, you have a choice. You can do this differently and get a different result, or you can do the same thing you've been doing and get the same result. So it's really your choice, babe. Like, what do you want to do? And I think in that moment, I took like a really big exhale and I was like, I'm willing to do it differently. I'm willing to just do whatever you say. And I felt like I was withdrawing from drugs like you see on the movies. Like I couldn't imagine what it was like not calling him or reaching out or speaking up or trying to go sleep with somebody else or trying to get another job that would fulfill my needs financially, whatever it was. I was just constantly trying to chase the next thing. And you said something to me that I actually, now that I'm in the role of coach, that I say to my clients is you know, sitting on the couch a couple days later, you said, let's talk once a week. And on that next call, I was just so defeated and I was crying and I was like, I don't know which way is up. Like, I don't know what to do next. I mean, everything felt like a huge fog on me. And you said to me, and I say this to all my clients is, I'm going to teach you how to love you. And I'm going to give you those tools. And the way that we're going to do that is we're going to keep what we say between us. We're not going to judge, shame, or criticize one another. And this one was really important. It was I'm going to show up for you. We're both going to show up for one another. And if we can't, we're going to let each other know. And those are 3 principles that I live my whole life by now, because it taught me how to trust other people and it taught me how to trust myself. And then it allowed me to let other people trust me in that way.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing that you said that was so profound. And I don't think you even realized that you just said this, but most people don't realize that as we see progression in our partners or our loved one, maybe not our partner, maybe our children, whatever, but this disease we know progresses. And you mentioned a bunch of things that he was doing. But the reality is our disease was progression as well. The degrees of codependency and the disease of being addicted to someone in a relationship, whether it's my child, whether it's my parent, whether it's my lover, right? We get as sick, if not sicker than. And, you know, we want to make it about them, but it's always was like, I can remember this, like I felt like someone took a bucket of ice and threw it in my face. And when I realized, like, wait a minute, you're playing a part in all this.
Yeah.
And you do have choices. And I didn't know that I had choices. I honestly felt like there was nowhere else to go. This was my destiny. This is going to be my life. How do I get enough strength? Because I'm so weak at this point to crawl out of this thing that I got myself into, but I didn't even know how I got myself into it. And so that's where I go, like, I don't think most family members can take responsibility for that until they really hear it, like right in their face, go like, wow, like I did this to me and I didn't even know it. It's insidious.
You used to say this phrase to me from the very beginning and often up until a few years ago. I think now I've been able to practice it more, where now I come to you and I say, okay, so there's their part and there's my part. And normally now I start with my part. I'm like, so here's my part. But you better believe, remember at the beginning, I'd always be like, and they did this and they did that and they did that. I was constantly pointing the finger. But I think one of the beautiful things that you taught me was that my intuition was right when I thought that I was getting into a relationship that was similar to my mom. You helped me to be able to call the characteristics and the symptoms and the behaviors that I was doing, my part, meaning, choosing to go on a date with that guy, or choosing to take that job because that job paid $100,000 or whatever it was. Yep. When really it was ego, right? I think I was able to recognize that I was an adult child of an alcoholic. And so now I had something to call it. And this is what I never understood. Like when I would hear you at the beginning say, well, he's an alcoholic, or, you know, my mom is an alcoholic. And I'd be like, yeah, but it's a choice. Like, why are they doing it? You say, no, love, like it's a disease. And I really didn't understand it. And then finally it hit me when I put the onus back on me, when I was like, oh my God, like I know right from wrong, but yet I still keep choosing to do it this way. It helped me to realize that this disease that they have and the disease that I have of codependency, which is always trying to make everything right and read a room and the different temperatures in the room and then adjusting my personality based on that, is to recognize that like I came from trauma and there was no other way. And I remember you gave me this exercise. You said, write everybody in your whole family, write everybody's names on 2 large pieces of paper and write down what their characteristics are. Who's the sex addict? Who's the one that's a little, got the stash of pills? Who's the one who's an overworker? Write it all down. And then at the bottom, you know, it's me, right? Because it's parents. And then my parents had a kid. And I stepped back and we were on the phone with each other and you said, so what do you see? And we both kind of responded with, oh my God, I wasn't going to come out any other way.
Exactly.
Like,
exactly,
yes, there's
right?
the funny parts of my humor and the things that I love about myself. I also got that from them.
Exactly.
But the way that I experience anxiety, the way that my mom used to call me and then she would call again and again and again until I picked up the phone. You don't realize, but that's codependency. And you're like, oh, Jesus, you know, and I used to do that to people and,
Sure.
you know, realizing I learned these behaviors. And so it helped me to put the perspective back in on like, oh, that's kind of what an alcoholic, drug addict, sex addict, overworker, that's what they're experiencing. They know they're trying to feel better. And so they're just doing the things that they think will make them feel better, even though they know that it won't later. I was doing the same things. So I love that you taught me like there's my part and that there's their part, and also gave me an answer for calling it by name. Like I now call it by name, like, oh, this is my adult child talking, or like, this is my inner child talking, or this is the trauma that I've been experiencing.
Exactly, right? Who's showing up today? And
who's showing up? Because they all came to party.
I go like, oh man, Sybil, she's back.
Oh gosh.
Because I'm not sure which one of my 9,000 people are showing up.
Oh my
today.
God. I called you the other day and was like, I don't know what's going on, but somebody's back and they're running the show. And like, nothing's wrong. Like, I just need, I was like, I just need vitamin D. Okay. I think that's what it is.
Yep. And the good news is that we learn to find the humor in it all because, you know, our humanness is going to come out no matter what. You know, just because an alcoholic, we know they have a disease, but that doesn't give them carte blanche to keep doing what they're doing, right? They like us have to become responsible for that. And oftentimes after, you know, they've been through recovery, the first couple of times we give them grace, right? They don't even know the streetcar that hit them. But after that, there are consequences for some of their actions. And it's our job to set the boundaries in kind and loving ways and then hold our line, which is the difficult part, right? There's that codependent that rears its head again and goes, oh, but you know, if just this one more time, I'll just do it this way one more time. And we really feel like that's going to be better, but it's really never is. Like when I learned to set boundaries, I was like, my whole life began to change, like really change. And I'm like, wow, like who knew that that's all you really needed to do? And not ugly, because we can all set boundaries when we're pissed. It's easy when we start to get fired up. But when we're just being us and going like, no, that's just not going to be acceptable. And, you know, this is the reasons why. And I hold my line and smile while I'm doing it, and you go like, wow, I'm totally at peace. Who knew that this was possible? And it's really nice. You go, wow. And does it make everybody happy all the time? Of course not. No. But then again, I also learned that that's not on me. My job is to be kind and loving. It's not my job on how they receive it, right? As long as I'm being kind and loving as I present it.
Yeah.
And try my best to explain to them the questions that they have, but also to be able to take care of myself first, because without that, I can't really do much of anything else.
You always used to say to me, and you still do, is like, you're responsible for what you say and how you say it, but not how they take it. And I agree with you. I think once I started setting boundaries, my life got a whole lot better because I was less resentful. And I also think people could trust me more, meaning they knew where they stood with me. You ever have somebody in your life where you're like, don't really know where you stand with them because they say they're going to do one thing, but then they end up doing another. Like that was my life with an alcoholic and an addict. And then couple on top of narcissism, just a whole whole mess. And so I just found that like when I started to learn how to set boundaries, thanks to you, I was able to, I love bookending. It's like, if I had to set a boundary with somebody, I would go to you, I would have a conversation and be like, okay, so here's all the feelings I am feeling and all the thoughts I'm thinking about setting this boundary. And you would reassure me, like, it's my job to be responsible for what I say and how I say it, not how they take it. Some would take it really well and be super respectful, and others would not. And my job was to hold the line and just say, oh, okay, I can appreciate that that's how you feel. But I think what's confusing is, I grew up in an Irish Catholic family where we were taught to compromise.
And sometimes compromise is okay. I mean, when you listen
Yeah.
to somebody, you go like, hey, you know what? That makes a lot of sense. Maybe I will move my line, right? But if it's something I feel passionate about and I know it's going to be hurtful for me, we have to kind of throw away some of those old rules that we learned that actually we thought were healthy, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I always thought like, okay, and I always question like, how can I be an intelligent, as you mentioned, a college graduate, all these things, and be so ignorant when it comes to my emotional self?
Mm-hmm.
And we've learned a lot, like most of us, and I don't think that there's many exceptions to this rule, but there may be a few, that most of us that came from addiction or dysfunction, a home where one parent was incredibly depressed or there was a lot of abuse or those types of things, that we come out emotionally, mature. We don't. And we have to learn what that looks like. And so we act in ways, we bring the things that we did as children into our adult relationships, thinking that that is normal because that's what we've seen.
Mm-hmm.
And when I got to understand that I was taught, I was trained. And I'm like, oh, but going to people that actually knew, studied, taught me that these things were not as healthy as I thought they were. And actually, in some cases, extremely detrimental, that it was okay to just humble myself enough to say, I didn't know. How do I know what I don't know? And that there's nothing wrong with me inherently. I'm not a leper, but I do need to learn and I need to grow up. And, when we realize that we can tell somebody else, hey, you know what? You're not the only person that acts like they're 12 when you're, going like, but I'm a grown adult. And I'm like, yes, I understand that. I did it too. And so I don't want to shame myself for that, but I need to learn tools and techniques to get through that. And you've been doing such an amazing job. I mean, I look back and I think of, even myself, right? And I see that in you so many times when we had all that nervous energy and we were like, go, go, go. And I'm going, go, 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 go to where? I'm just spinning,
Yes.
And if it wasn't energy spinning, it was my brain spinning. And, the perception that, we're calm, cool, right? I actually thought I was pretty calm and cool, right? And
Yeah,
people would
I
just
do
start laughing, going like, are you kidding me? You have like more nervous energy than any human being I know. Today, they really do say you are a calming force, right?
Yeah.
But my energy is different. I still go, go, go. You still go, go, go. But we don't go, go, go that way. We go because we want to go and because that's who we are, but not in a spinning way to get this feeling out of my body, right? And I can try to identify. That was the other thing I think that was so important, was for you to be able to vocalize the feelings that you were having without being judged and being normalized, and then saying, okay, so what are we going to do with these feelings? And are these feelings even like, do they have anything to do with what's actually happening? Because a lot of times we have feelings, right? And they're not. Other times they are indicators for us that are so important.
Yeah.
And to process them with somebody because we didn't, like I didn't know sometimes, yours were maybe, one of the things that you and I joke about a lot is that I'm kind of like, do I have a feeling? And yours is
I'm like, I have so many
feelings, right? So, and
like, I think that's why I used to go, go, go so fast is I had so many feelings. I didn't know what feelings were other than I could identify mad and sad and happy. But I never knew that the feelings that I was feeling were actually coming from a thought, like whether it was I was thinking I was good enough or not good enough or whatever the case may be. And so I think that's what really drove me to go, go, go. And you brought up a really key point is, and then to have someone come along yourself who would listen to the thoughts and the feelings that I was having created a level of safety in me that gave me the ability to acknowledge my own thoughts and feelings, and that they in fact did matter. It didn't mean I had to take action on them, but my feelings did matter. And I think what happened is over time, with that consistency in us talking, in that consistency of me doing the exercises that you recommended, I started to slow down. And it was feedback that I would always get at work, and I'd be so annoyed and I'd say, I don't know what slowing down means. But I found that over the last probably 10 years, a lot of people have said, oh, your energy, it's just so, I just love it. Like they don't know how to finish the sentence, but they're like talking about how my energy is light and bright now, as opposed to, I think for me, my anxiety probably caused other people anxiety, you know? And now, like I even did that this week is, you know, the seasons are changing. We started to get some winter storms up in the Northeast, and I found that I was starting to just sort of felt like a dark cloud was kind of coming over me. And I found myself reaching for the cookies, you know, started reaching for my phone to check the dating app. And I forget who I was going to reach. Oh, I think an ex was popping up. And I told you I was having all these dreams about exes. And because that was my old coping mechanism. When I don't feel good enough, then I'm going to reach for someone else to make me feel good. And so this time, and really what I've been doing for the last few years, but particularly the last year, was like, oh, I know how to self-regulate now. I know to just check in with myself. Like, how am I feeling? Are you hungry, angry, lonely, or tired? I was like, I am all of them. So that means I'm not going to do anything but feed myself and maybe go down for a nap. And like actually just slow down. And then I called you. But before, I always used to have to call you first because I did. And you told me, you encouraged me. You were like, it's actually will help you to figure out how you're thinking and feeling so that you can figure out what to do. Because I think, I was so fiercely independent, or at least I kind of like how you said you used to pretend you were like calm, cool, and collective. Oh, I also pretended I was calm, cool, and collective, but I also pretended that I was fiercely independent and I didn't need anybody's help. And that went out the window that day that I called you, because I think what happened was I learned that the reason why I wanted love so badly in my life was because of how I had grown up and the inconsistencies of saying one thing and doing another and getting mixed messages, but then also how that determined my self-worth. And then that was my crutch. And so I just wanted to do it differently. And I think now, instead of figuring out like, I need to do it all on my own, whether it's running my business, whether it's my money, whether it's my eating habits, or whether it's my mental health, like I have somebody to help with each one of those areas. And what's cool is you often can help me with all of those areas when one is spinning, because it's all directly related back to the core, which is that feeling of not feeling good enough. And where does that come from? Growing up with addiction.
Exactly. So you mentioned a couple other things, Kate, that I think are so key, and something that I've always been very enamored with you on. And I wish that I could convey that to most of my clients, which is I've asked you always to be 100% honest with me. And you do that, you know, whether or not it's something, and you may, in the beginning, I remember you saying like, I'm so ashamed of this and I'm so embarrassed that I'm going to tell you this. And I'm like, please don't, let's just put it out there, because we minimize it or we negate it. We pretend it's not happening. And the minute we say it, it kind of neutralizes it and normalizes it and goes like, oh, like she didn't react in this crazy way. She didn't start telling me, oh my God, I can't believe you did that. And that was one that was really important that I think it's hard for most people to get really honest about what is going on for them, because we feel uncomfortable and we feel like we're going to be ashamed, because guess what? A lot of us were. Yeah. The second thing that I've always asked you to do is when I give you an assignment to do it, and you do. And most people don't realize, like, yes, I give homework, but it's not to give homework, right? It's to go, we need to see where you are with this stuff. And the promise is the more that you do what I'm asking you to do, the quicker you're going to get through this. And the more that you can start to see yourself for what's really going on. And you'll start to have those aha moments. and I won't have to tell you what's going on or even kind of guide you in that direction so that you can figure it out, right? You'll start going, oh my God, I wrote it down and this is what came up. And I'm like, yes, exactly. So that's the part that I go like, I wish I could, instill, and I get it. It's hard and it's scary, right? So
especially when you think of what the outcomes could be,
right.
Judgment, criticism. But if you go back to your golden rule, you said you wouldn't judge and criticize, and you have not in 15 years.
Right. I mean, and I also shared with you that I'm going to share some things with you. And the requirement is that you don't talk to anybody else about those things unless we discuss it. Right. And to be partnerships in this committed recovery process, we need to do that. And does everybody do it perfectly? No. I mean, I can remember one time outing somebody by accident. And that made me feel terrible. I mean, it wasn't intentional, but it just came out. And mostly because I was so excited that two people saw each other, right? And these are two meaningful people in my life, and I wanted to introduce them. And I went like, oh my God, I just did something that is absolutely like you're not supposed to do. So we do those things.
I recently did it. I was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry.
Yes, exactly.
We haven't seen each other in person in like 3 years. I totally forgot.
And you're like, oh my God.
So embarrassed.
It is. It's horrible. But you also go like, okay, but I also know why those things are so important. I've seen the other side of how that has affected people in such a negative way. But mostly the things that we've been talking about today are really the encouragement. I mean, I saw a beautiful woman then who had, who was broken, right? Much like myself. And today I see this woman who is so full of vigor and life and what's coming down the pike and, to think of it. And when we have those weak moments or a moment where we're just off that day, I always like to remind you that, look, no, you are not having a fallback moment where you're going to start being, because we go to that all or nothing.
I go to like living in a cardboard box. Have I ever lived in a cardboard box? No. But my brain, and I think that's what I try to do, like, whether it's in coaching or in my podcast, I think I always try to be that honest. And I thank you for reminding me of that, because you're right. That was one thing you had asked of me at the beginning, that and to do the assignments. And I think by being that brutally honest, it's given me the ability to be brutally honest with you in the moments when I still have the days where I doubt. And I think that that's something I just kind of want to get across today, is that like there is still going to be moments where even when everything is going great, you might feel like the other shoe is going to drop, and then it will pass.
And I always tell people, right, it's our humanness. None of us are going to do this perfectly. I have moments like that, right, where I know I'm not my best me today, or I need someone to tell me, you know what, you're okay. And it's going to be okay, whatever's going on. And, I, like you, I was fiercely independent. It's still hard for me to ask for help, but I make myself do that with my trusted few, because I think it's so important to make sure that I understand there are people who are out there for me, that love and care about me as I love and care about others. And we, that is contagious. We live in a very dark world in a lot of instances, if we want to look at it that way. You and I choose to look at the light, right? And I keep driving people towards the light and going like, no, we don't have to stay in darkness. We can be the light. And so I want to attract that. I don't want to be bringing people down. I want to bring them up and go like, yes, we need us. We need people like us to give that, outward, you can do this. Yeah. And it's not easy. And today's a good day. Tomorrow may not be. It's okay, but we can get you back.
Well, it's okay. And I think too that I was reminded recently that this is just a page in my story. It's not the whole chapter, and it's certainly not the whole book. And I think that when I was reminded of that this week, it made me realize that it's like, it's okay to turn the page. Like, it's okay to like continue to just focus on the light. Because I remember when 2020 hit and all that combustion, and I just said to you, I was like, am I crazy? Like, I'm not really worried. You're like, it's all the work you've been doing. Like, I just kept saying, like, I feel safe. I feel protected. I feel trusting. And I felt like I was I had a few people I could talk to about this zest for life and knowing that we would move through it and stuff like that. But I think that I think there are more people like us out there. I just think that I don't know. I think it'll be really cool to hear how many more people there are out there who resonate with this podcast and go, all right, I'm willing. And you always say that to me, like, just be willing. And you know that someone is ready to recover and to do this next chapter in their life is because they're willing. And I think I was just willing to, like you said, to continue to just move towards the light instead of the darkness.
I love it. Well, this has been an awesome podcast for me. What a pleasure to be on with someone that I happen to adore and has been such a bright light in my life. And the reality is you teach me as much as I teach you, because we teach each other. I always told you I make a concerted effort that if I'm telling you to do something, I damn well better be doing it myself.
Yeah.
So it keeps me accountable, right? It keeps me humble, accountable, and moving forward on my journey as well. And you encourage me as much as I encourage you. And I, just adore that in you. So I think we're going to, have a great time making more chapters in our stories, because my story ain't over, girl. And I'm looking forward to seeing where we both go and keeping each other in our lives. And thank you
so much. And I'm so grateful to be on and share a little bit of my story. And also just, thank you for always just being so willing to be there. And I think this podcast will give a lot of people hope. I think more people are suffering from addiction and or have a family member who's suffering from addiction and just feel so alone. And I mean, you said it at the beginning, like, you're not alone. Like, we've all been through it, and it's now time to kind of be willing to talk about it. And I'm just so grateful that you picked up the phone that day and have been 15 years later still picking up the phone day after day when I need you. And now you're doing this for so many other people. I think you're gonna heal a lot of people in this process. So thank you for letting me share my story, and thanks for being so loving to me too.
You make it easy, Kate. So in saying that, I want you guys, anybody that's interested, why don't you check us out on Instagram, Facebook. We have a website, Family and Addiction Experts. The podcast is Healing Families Shattered by Addiction. I want you to remember, never lose hope. It's always there. We can make this a better place by helping each other. Thanks, Kate. I love you, girl.
I love you too.
Thanks so much for joining our podcast, Healing Families Shattered by Addiction. We'll be back in a couple of weeks with more important tools, techniques, and ways for you to focus on you instead of the alcoholic or addict in your world.
Until then, please go to our website, familyandaddictionexperts.com. That's familyandaddictionexperts.com. You'll also see links to our Facebook and Instagram pages. Please also, if you have any emails that you would like to send us, that's info@familyandaddictionexperts.com. That's info@familyandaddictionexperts.com. With any thoughts, feelings, questions that you may have for us, we would love to hear from you, and we look forward to seeing you in a couple of weeks.